geography at A-levels and biology at university. Because, why? I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. And as it turns out, I ended up being an Olympic sailor and two-time Olympic coach. I've lived my life by the motto that if you can believe it, you can achieve it. And there's never been a more important time in history to believe that change is possible. Can you put your hands up if you've heard about the climate and ecological emergency? Climate change? Global warming? Okay, thank you. Well, I only learned that there was a problem with this in January this year. I learned about it at school. I learned about the greenhouse effect 25 years ago. But then I just got distracted with everyday life. And because it wasn't being brought to my attention in the media or by the governments, I didn't think about it. But now that I do know there's a problem, I've dedicated my entire life and all my free time to doing everything I can to rectify the situation. This is our amazing planet, Earth. It's incredible how it sustains life. The land and the water are surrounded by gases known as our atmosphere that contain the oxygen that we breathe and greenhouse gases, namely carbon dioxide and methane. The energy from the sun hits the Earth and reflects back out to space, but some of that energy is trapped by these greenhouse gases and warms the planet. This is a good thing because without it, the Earth would be a ball of ice. Now, paleoclimatologists have discovered that carbon dioxide is a potent climate regulator. That means that the more carbon dioxide there is in the atmosphere, the hotter the planet. The less carbon dioxide, the cooler the planet. But we've been pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere at completely unprecedented rates. Since we discovered fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas, these are the remains of living things buried deep beneath the Earth, hundreds of millions of years ago, and they contain a lot of energy. And we've exploited this energy to build our industrial civilization and the comfortable lives that we enjoy today, to fuel our cars, to heat our homes, to power the factories. But in burning these fossil fuels, we've pumped huge amounts of carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere, so intensifying this greenhouse effect. It's like we've wrapped the Earth in a thick blanket, and it's not at all surprising that it's getting hotter. This table shows on the vertical axis on the left the atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, the amount of carbon dioxide in the world. And along the bottom, the horizontal axis, the last 2,000 plus years. And you can see from this red line that for some 18,000 years, the planet has had a relatively stable level of carbon dioxide. So living things emitting carbon dioxide have been countered by other things that absorb it. And everything's stayed in this nice balance. And there's been this relatively stable climate during this period of time. That is until the Industrial Revolution began, when we started burning fossil fuels, identified by the blue arrow on the screen. And you can see what's been happening to carbon dioxide levels since then. They started increasing, and in the last few years, those levels have skyrocketed. And we're now at 412 parts per million. And it's not surprising that this is having an escalating effect on global temperatures. The Earth is getting hotter. When you hear scientists talk about a temperature above of global warming, they're referring to the temperature before we started burning fossil fuels, so that pre-industrial level. We're now at 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Sorry, what? Hang on. 1.1 degrees. That doesn't sound like a lot. That's what I fussed about. But that small increase in global temperatures has created a huge shift in weather patterns. And so some areas in the planet are now experiencing temperatures some 30 degrees higher than usual, and it's making our weather systems more erratic and more extreme. So that was the basics of the climate science, and now I'll touch on the environmental issues. One of the biggest drivers of land use has been the need to feed some now 7.5 billion humans. And that number is rapidly increasing. So it's predicted that by 2050, there'll be some 10 billion of us at the current rate of increase. To feed that many humans, we've had to deploy all of our resources. We've deforested huge amounts of land and we've replaced it with farmland. So we've taken these incredibly rich biodiverse systems that support masses of different species to live within these forests, and we've replaced them with a monoculture, a single crop or a single farm animal. And that's very poor in its biodiversity. It doesn't support many species to exist. And we've eradicated most of the pests that would have eaten those crops with pesticides, which are poisons. And in doing so, we've destroyed much of the insect life that would naturally be inhabiting this earth. And that has a negative effect on food cycles, and we're pushing species to become extinct and endangered. And the most worrying at the moment is the threat to our pollinators, our bees and our butterflies. Without pollinators, a lot of species of plants will die, including some that we eat. Now, humans have drastically altered the surface of this planet. This diagram shows the distribution of mammalian life. On the left, it shows 10,000 years ago that 99% of the animals that roamed the earth were wild, and we made up 1% of them. We need to remember that we are animals too. We are part of this animal kingdom. But we have drastically altered. So today, we make up 36%, whilst devastatingly only 4% of animals are now wild. And shockingly, 60% of the animals on this planet we farm to feed us. Oceans are an incredible carbon sink. They've been a real help in this battle against global warming. Water absorbs carbon dioxide, but the more carbon dioxide the oceans absorb, the more acidic they become. And the oceans have also been heating up. They've been absorbing the heat. But as water heats up, it loses its ability to hold oxygen. So the effect of global warming on our oceans is that they're becoming more acidic and less oxygenated. And this is having a negative effect on marine life. And it's also causing shifts in ocean currents, which is causing shifts in air currents, which is making our weather systems become more extreme and erratic. And these are some of the shocking effects of global warming. We're seeing increases in heat waves and droughts, in fires and floods. We're seeing more extreme and more intense storms. Our ice caps are melting and our seas are rising. The map in the bottom right-hand corner is a screen grab from a model that shows that at 2 degrees of global warming, you see the areas in red, that Weymouth town centre is flooded and Portland is an island. And if global leaders don't stop emitting carbon emissions, then this is predicted to happen by the end of this century. So within your lifetimes, you may have to row across to the mainland. But it doesn't have to be this way. The scientists do say that right now we do still have time to fix this. You're probably all aware of the plastic pollution problem. The use of single-use plastics, it simply must stop. We have to shift to a circular economy where there is no waste. Anything that's made should be able to be reused, remodeled, repaired, or recycled. It's quite simple, really. This guy is a legend, Sir David Attenborough. He says, right now, we are facing a man-made disaster of a global scale. Our greatest threat in 1,000 years, climate change. These headlines are shocking. Human activity is causing irreparable harm to life on Earth. But yet only select media are reporting on this. This is kind of, you ask the question, well, if things are as bad as they are, why isn't everybody talking about this? Well, part of the reason is that the media are shackled by the interests of their advertisers. They make their money by selling space in papers and time on TV to companies that are trying to sell their products. Most products are made out of or using fossil fuels, and they're transported using fossil fuels. And so these companies don't want us to stop using fossil fuels because they won't make money in the way that they know how. The other part of the problem is that the fossil fuel companies themselves spend billions on campaigning climate science denial, on silencing the media or getting them to publish articles that deny climate science, or at least put confusion in people's minds. And the media is owned by billionaires whose own self-interest is in the continuation of business as usual, the continuation of using fossil fuels to power their private jets and air condition their homes, and to continue making unimaginable amounts of money. Thankfully, more and more media are starting to tell the truth on this. So right now, 1% of the global population holds 50% of the world's wealth. Hands up who's played the game of Monopoly. Yeah, so you know that the game is finished, right, when one person controls all the wealth. I think the game of life is getting pretty close to that point. Like, my feeling is the rules need rewriting and we need to start the game again. Or we just shouldn't allow individuals to get that crazily rich, and we shouldn't allow people equally to live in poverty. Former Vice President Al Gore and avid climate activist says the solutions to the climate crisis are within reach. How do we know that there is a problem, and how do we know how much time we have left to fix it? Whenever you read anything in the papers or the media or hear it on the TV of interest to you, you should always do your own research to find out if it's true or not. And when you're researching, you really want to look for the most reliable sources. And there is no more reliable source than the IPCC. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is made up by the United Nations, and it consists of all the world's leading scientists from many different countries. And they release reports. And the last report was released last October, and it said that it warned global leaders that they must keep global warming under 1.5 degrees to avoid catastrophic and runaway climate change. The UN Environment Programme Executive Director Eric Slorm said of this report that it's like a deafening, piercing smoke alarm going off in the kitchen. We have to put the fire out. That's because we really have to start acting now to fix things. It's great to see that the IPCC also identified the fact that in order to fix the climate crisis, we have to eradicate poverty. There's not a clearer, more sensible voice on the climate crisis than that of 16-year-old Greta Thunberg. And what a legend this girl is. Last August, she started striking from school on Fridays. She went and sat outside the Swedish Parliament with her placard that just says, "School strikes for climate." Within months, she'd managed to motivate millions of school kids around the world to strike for climate justice.